Recording in progress.
All right, welcome. We're going to call this school board meeting to order. It's 5:03. Erin, would you like to call the roll?
Yes. Student trustee Kinsland.
Yes.
Present. Trustee James.
Present.
Present.
I don't know, I just
Trustee
say yes
Morton?
to all these.
Here.
Trustee Schaefer.
Here.
Trustee Ohm.
Present.
Trustee
Here.
Griffin.
Here.
Great.
Confused.
Here.
All right. We do not have anything to report out of closed session. I think the next item is approving the agenda. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda before we approve it? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I move we approve the agenda. Second.
Student trustee Kinsland.
Yes.
Trustee James.
Yes.
Trustee Morton.
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer.
Yes.
Trustee Ohm.
Yes.
Trustee Griffin.
Yes. All right. It looks like our timed item for parent and community comment is right at 5 p.m., so let's do that now. Does anyone in the public wish to speak on any item that is not on tonight's agenda?
I see no one.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we will move on to the timed item at 5:05 p.m., which it looks like we're about 30 seconds too quick for, but we'll start there. Item 6.1 is a public hearing regarding the Local Control Accountability Plan, the LCAP. This is a plan that we are required to prepare, describing our annual goals for pupils with specific activities identified to address state and local priorities. This is an item that is something that we will be going through in detail and discussing later at agenda item number 7.4, but this is the public hearing that we are opening for anyone to comment publicly about the LCAP if they would like to do so. Do we have any public comment on the LCAP?
I see none.
Okay, and of course the public is always welcome to comment at the time that we discuss it during its agenda item at 7.4. Item 6.2, public hearing regarding the MUSD's 24-25 budget, including MCN's budget.
You want to officially close the public hearing?
Yeah, sure, that's a great idea, Michael, thank you. We're now closing the public hearing on the LCAP, which was 6.1. Now we're opening the public hearing on 6.2 regarding the MUSD budget as well as the MCN budget. Again, these are items that we will be discussing in more detail. 7.2 is the MUSD budget, and 7.3 will be the MCN update and budget for 24-25. But this is the public hearing in case anyone wants to make any public comments about the MUSD budget or MCN budget. Do we have any public comment?
I see none.
All right. Hearing none. We will close the public hearing on 6.2. Moving on to item 7. First item, 7.1, is the Mendocino High School solar project. So this is the second time this has been on our agenda to discuss both the funding options and location options for a possible solar electricity installation here at the high school. This was an item that was originally part of the high school modernization project, and then it was unfortunately left on the cutting room floor when we were having budget issues, and we now have been assured that we will be receiving about $1.1 million in state grant funding as sort of a reimbursement of some of the bond funding we spent, and so we're looking at using that funding, which should be coming in by the end of this year, to do solar. Erin, are you able to pull up the maps that we've looked at last time that's under 7.1? And in particular, it would be page 5 of the PDF. We're looking at doing a somewhere in the range of a 200 to 219 kilowatt array, which is what we have an existing application in for. And the most recent discussions, I think we've talked about a lot of options. But I think we sort of been zeroing in on using the locations on page 5 of the 7.1 document at C1 and C2, which are both carport locations, essentially where the portables are right now, just west of the gym, in the parking lot there, which are about, I think, 12 feet high at their lowest, and can be sort of parked under, and these would hang a bit over that hillside that drops down to the north. Can you go up one page? Yeah, thank you, Aaron. And then also doing some ground mount as well, because that C1 and C2 only provide us about 100 kilowatts, so we need to find another 100 to 120 kilowatts at either the GM cypress trees, the GM track slope, or the GM track.
Those, like, either or, like, we choose one of those?
Probably.
Okay.
Not necessarily. You know, for example, we could, the GM track slope, GM I think just stands for ground mount. If we were to do that full array showing there, it would, I think, block some spectator areas for the soccer field, so I don't think we want to use that entire area. We could potentially use a portion of the track slope, and then we wouldn't have the full 100 kilowatts, and then we need to get some more somewhere else. But it sort of gets more expensive the more you do smaller sections in different places. You have to do a 6-foot fence around each section. So it might not be terribly efficient to do multiple
I know that
locations.
for the students, it was definitely, I was talking with them, it was unfavorable for the GM track, like the one on the ocean side. People were not in favor of that as a position, but it seemed like everyone was fine with the other positions for the
Because
solar.
of the views or the cutting down of those trees that would be required, or did you
both.
get a sense? Okay.
Multiple reasons.
Yeah.
Cutting down of the trees. A lot of people feel like it's like a wind block for the soccer field, and they think it just makes it more pretty around here.
Thanks, Knut.
Did we get any answers to our questions about what would trigger a new review by planning department? And
No, she has not gotten back to me about that. I will reach back out, hopefully get an answer by Tuesday. But no, I haven't.
Yeah, so the current approval we do have for the coastal development is C1, C2, and the track slope, as I understand it. There's an outstanding question that we don't know the answer to as to whether, if we do, for instance, the GM cypress trees rather than the GM track slope, or a combination of GM track slope and GM track, or, you know, cypress trees and track, whether that would trigger, at some point, are we changing it enough that that would trigger having to get a new CDP or not?
I did not reach out to SHN. I don't know, have you seen anyone on site?
No.
So that was another question, is the property line area.
What are the green spheres?
I can reach out to him tomorrow.
Those trees or clumps.
Oh,
So those, yeah, they represent significant block for the
Okay.
arrays, which is pretty much why we've abandoned the use of C4 as an option, because of those, the obstructions. of all the trees.
Why has there not been the idea, like, what is the problematic nature of putting them on the roof for this school? Because I know that they did at the K8, and I'm just curious what makes a difference.
It has to, it triggers structural considerations
Okay.
that then would require engineering. And then, which equates to cost.
Yeah.
I think that's.
Yeah, I think
we
it
were
was,
strongly discouraged against
it was ruled out early in the process when we
we
first.
mounted solar panels when we were doing the new roof here.
And that was already navigating that reality even before considering solar in terms of what the state required as far as structural upgrades to this building when phase 1 occurred. And so we were advised that they would have required considerable more upgrades.
Makes sense.
And we really, you know, haven't refined how much of the GM cypress trees we would use. And I guess if we're using C1 and C2, we only have to use half of what's in that area.
Yeah, but the pump track is there, so that,
Right.
yeah, and the pump track is probably almost a third of that area, maybe a quarter, that sort of northwest corner.
But is there any issue with you using the south portion of the cypress trees?
The area that's not marked, you mean?
Yeah.
There's moving that area.
I believe Tom felt like the slope made it not feasible because of the angle needed
Oh, that's
for the
right.
panels and the slope, it's facing north, because we thought maybe he had generated these drawings without ever being on site, and he said, no, he in fact has been here, and that was the reason that those were not shown and coming any further south.
Yeah, essentially C2 would shade any solar panels that come any further
And I don't
south.
think
or-
we confirmed it 100%, but I'm assuming that all the cypress trees south of the last array shown in GM cypress trees would have to be cut down
I
to
thi-
allow for a proper exposure.
I think
of-
that's
of any
probably right.
panels.
Of C2.
Yeah, some of those have
No,
our,
of GM cypress trees. Even though those trees
Yeah.
saying, why can't we use that area? We can't use the area, but I'm assuming we would have to clear it. Otherwise, it would be another one of those big green dots that Knut asked about.
yeah, I think that's right. I think that this assumes that
Yeah.
entire GM cypress trees area would be cut.
Yeah.
And
If
same
we
thing,
use-
if we did the GM track, all of those cypress trees would have to be cut.
If we use the entire cypress tree area, we wouldn't have to do C1 and C2, right?
I think that's right. We could probably do one or the other. Let's see, GM cypress trees is 201. Yeah. So, yeah, we could just even do one of them smaller. But that would require relocating the pump track that community members have worked hard on and is a public resource. There is other space there, a little bit to the west where that could be done, but it is.
And C1 and C2, do they block anyone's view?
I think we're not seeing conclusive from, from what was the weight room? I forget what we're calling it now.
The hospitality
The
center of
hospitality
the
area.
western portion of the gym, there will be windows looking out to the west that I'm guessing you'll at least see the roofs. But they'll
You're
be-
up a bit, so it might be smack dab in front of you when you look towards the ocean. Kind of like those other cypress trees block the ocean. For me, it's difficult to make a decision without knowing the boundaries of our western boundary, because as I've always said, that's my first choice, is utilizing some of that area. But without knowing that boundary, that's hard to proceed on that front.
I think I'm leaning more toward using the cypress trees area because they are bigger and older and dangerous and need to come out anyway. I worry every time I go under them. I worry when families and kids are playing underneath them during soccer games because so many of those branches have come down
Definitely
over the
same.
years. We've all had that
Yeah.
experience. They're out there now. So I lean toward doing it there.
I mean, if you went that way and eliminated C1 and C2, you might be able to come down farther because you're not going to have that shading over the panels.
Or maybe go a little bit to the east, just cutting into the lacrosse baseball field a tiny bit, which is bigger than it has to be. Yeah, I mean, maybe one thing to do is, maybe we agree to use the cypress trees area and C1 and C2 as the areas we plan to use, and then maybe put up some sort of story poles for C1 and C2 and get a sense for that, and then sort of finalize it from there.
And how far south does the track come, the jump track,
The pump track,
pump track? Is it,
maybe a little more than a third of the panels?
Around where the curve of the track ends, I would say. That's
where you
about
can
right.
actually see something on this picture?
Yeah, this satellite image is a little old. Because, in fact, some of
Before-
those southern cypress trees right north of C2 aren't actually there anymore, because they had to be taken out, I believe.
Yeah, it's before phase one occurred anyway, so it doesn't show, because the spoils pile is not there.
Yeah, I'd say it's sort of the third and fourth and fifth row down of GM cypress trees from the top. That seems about right. On the portion where the trees are not.
Well, given the variables and the things we still don't know, is there still a rush to make a decision today?
I'd kinda
Only to
like
get it
to-
all approved.
I kind of like to make a decision that we are going to do it and keep working on, exactly where. But go forward with the decision that we do want to do an approximate 200 kilowatt or, 200 to 220 kilowatt array.
And so let's say we made that decision, what would happen in the next 2 or 3 months?
I think we'd get Tom working and Mark Petrocchi on the parts that they need to do to start preparing to put it out to bids. We'd have to figure out whether we need to go back to the, on a coastal development permit or not. Those are the biggest things.
Yeah, I guess, right, the question is, how much can they do for us before we have a precise location determined?
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
and I don't know the exact answer to that. I don't know if we would rely on them, but the notion of some story poles for C1 and C2, I think would probably be very helpful. I think we all share some concerns about that. I personally am not opposed to considering C3 as an alternate, because I don't think it would affect the view shed as much. But possibly even C2 is a far more impact than C1. So that's another possibility, but not really any way of knowing without some precise.
Are those just on the slope there, or do those cut into the parking lot a little?
Well, C stands for canopy or
Carport.
Carport, so they're elevated, so you could
Oh.
park underneath them. Like you've
Oh.
probably parked in various parking lots that have had
Yeah.
this, where they're on maybe, so I think Tom told us maybe
there
the
you go.
smallest one would be maybe on 2 big steel poles, the larger one would maybe be 3, kind of right in the midline, and then they would be cantilevered out north,
So I
south.
think it would be
Okay.
hanging back over that slope and forward over the parking lot a bit.
So the
from
poles could
what it
basically,
looks like.
yeah, there's a sheet board.
Oh, yeah.
The poles could pretty much be at the edge of the parking lot. They could extend, the panels could extend out over the edge, some, and into the parking lot, some, but high enough that you could still park underneath them. And the required, I think you said minimum 12
12, I
feet on the
think.
low side is the height requirement. Which-
So why don't we make the final decision about where?
Would you say when?
When?
I mean, if I'm a minority, then we can abandon the GM track, and then I don't think we have that, then we're not held up by surveying. So I don't know if that's, just a straw vote, if we have anyone else that agrees with me on that as being a preferred location. If we throw that out, then some story poles, maybe, and I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd
he's
like
just
the
getting out
board
there
to
with a
have
big
another
stick.
site visit. I just feel like this isn't good enough to look at this. We need to be out there. And I still feel like keeping the other part open. I'd like to see some poles out there in terms of weighing view obstructions. I mean, there's a part of me that thinks it would look bad to have technical stuff out there, but in a way, it would be a much better view if you cut down those trees.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like
My
we need-
concern is there be a 6-foot fence
Yeah.
pretty close to the track because we don't have quite as much property to the west as we thought we had, as this, we think. We don't know 100% sure. We're kind of overlaying the survey with the satellite map of this, but it doesn't look like we have quite the amount of room that's shown on this drawing for the GM track, so that would mean bringing the fence all the way up pretty close to the edge of the track, which I think would be a visual negative, potentially.
Yeah, I think you're right in that regard. I think we would be pretty close to the track to make it work.
I wonder whether, since we have a meeting next Tuesday, could, as part of maybe our closed session, be, and we have a facilities committee meeting before that, we could meet out there together.
I think it has to be open session so that anybody who wanted to come would have.
Or we
to
could
be
maybe
able to
do it
come,
during open session.
You know,
Yeah, take a field
Is that
trip.
possible?
I mean, we should do it before we come in here. It wouldn't be televised, but I mean, you know, it could be open to the public.
We can't do an Aaron Sorkin walk and talk? That sounds like fun. Yeah, maybe we do
Well,
that
I-
as part of open session.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I'm happy to make a motion, we can talk about to commit to moving forward on this with understanding that we haven't finalized location. I think I think it's a question for Tom as to some specifics so that either we can find someone to build story poles or he can recommend someone. Or we need some very specific details for those to be built.
Yeah,
More specific than what we have right here. If we want.
Probably not able to do before Tuesday,
No, probably not.
to be realistic.
Right.
well, if the southern, if it's a 12-foot minimum on the southern end, well, presumably, right, because it slopes up to the north, then it seems like 12-foot poles on those two southern corners of C1 and C2 would tell us a lot.
But part of the problem is the portables are kind of in the way,
Yeah, that is a problem,
which I know they're pushing to get out of here, but
yeah. Well, they might provide a good sense for where
it's true.
they might be about 12 feet tall, too, so we might be in luck.
Have you looked into that, Tobin, or do they block the view now from the hospitality area?
They fill the screen.
They must.
Yeah, they pretty well fill it, yeah. You don't look over them, though? Because you go up.
It's kind of opposite, because I think they would just tuck under the 12 feet.
The portables might. Right, that is one thing to, yeah, it's a line, more or less, if you're at the same level.
Yeah.
You're seeing a pitched line that you're looking at.
Or it could be a blinding mirror-like effect, or it could be you're underneath, yeah. It's hard because historically, we haven't used the west side of the gym for any,
Right.
nobody has ever looked out of those windows because it's just a weight room. Now it's a hospitality center, so we're having a new use of that area as well that we don't really know.
It's going to be, I think, a great use,
What
and
that
we
will
might be
be
like,
like.
well, that was kind
Well,
of
that was dumb
foolish.
to block the gorgeous view, right.
Well, I do remember when you were in the weight room though, after, in the afternoon, you'd want the shades down anyway, because that sun was blinding in there. So, you're not gonna be able to see much anyway.
In the afternoon.
Yeah.
So all those early games will be good?
And when
mean-
you take down those cypress trees for the pump track area, it would be an even better view, looking out of the gym.
Right, without those large cypress trees,
Yeah.
yeah, that line.
Well, and that's another option, is only using the northern portion of the GM track array.
Well, what,
So not
we
long
could,
line.
could take a 10-minute recess now and just walk outside and look.
Not a bad idea.
I'm happy with that, if people want to do that. I mean, another option is to do all ground mount and do cypress trees and track slope. Because we could still use some of the lower southern portion of the track slope without interfering with soccer viewing.
And we didn't break it down, but how, there's the one long line, and then there's all the short lines of the GM track, and how much is that one long line?
Right.
How many kilowatts is that?
Yeah.
I can grab a tape measure and let you guys go in the science rooms and look out at the C4 or whatever that is.
C3, yeah.
I'm quite no, that carpet at 12 feet, I mean, the roof is about 12 feet. Of those rooms, yeah, I mean, these, this is less than 12 feet right here above us, or around 12 feet. So there's no way, you'd be looking underneath them, besides the mounting poles. If we use C3, I'm pretty confident you'd be looking underneath them. I don't know, there's no windows on the two classrooms above the gymnasium, right? There's a utility room. Yeah, it's just it's the two science rooms, right?
I think it might be a more efficient use of our time for Wind Spirit and I to do another go through at our facilities committee meeting, which is before next Tuesday's meeting, and then we'll plan as part of the agenda of next Tuesday's meeting, a walk.
I think I would also like an idea of how much we would spend if we gave the go-ahead in the next 3 months to do the things that the two companies would do.
Okay.
In the next 3 months
Yeah.
specifically?
Well, just because we won't be meeting until
Uh-huh.
that period of time. And that'll give us, and that data theoretically will give us ideas whether we've totally underestimated the cost anyway, you know. I'm trying to still give us a chance to opt out if we find out that
Yeah.
it's not doable for one reason or another.
Yeah, and I think we definitely will still have that chance. It's always hard to, the sunk cost fallacy, right?
Conversely, I'm concerned that if we don't take some action really soon, we run the risk of not completing this in time to get our
I
time.
get that, I get that. That's why I'm saying, you know, let's say it's $50,000, that's one number. If it's $200,000, it's another number, that's all.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
We have gotten him to reevaluate and confirm his overall cost estimate though, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that was, yeah, and it included
So-
the process of going through vendors and presenting to the board the options
I
and
mean, I
that
guess,
sort of thing.
I guess following through on your scenario is, there's a, where would be the point that you would suggest we don't do this, I guess?
Well, I'd say if we have big hurdles from county planning, if that, you know,
Right?
got appealed some way, you know? If we found that we can't actually put 200 kilowatts of solar panels in the places that we want to put them in ground mounts, you know? Those are the kinds of things that I would
I
say.
agree with your first two. I mean, I'm pretty confident that in somewhere on our
Somewhere.
site, we'll find the places to put them if we so desire.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure there's a place to put 200.
Yeah.
Whether, you know, whether everybody will be happy with the aesthetics or the ink, you know, I mean, there are lots of competing,
Right. But assuming we agree to do it, then it becomes a majority decision after that,
right.
right? Well, what do you think? I mean, I'm still prepared, I'm happy to make a motion that we are committed to moving forward. I'll also move that that as a board, we are committed to moving forward with photovoltaics on this high school campus within the number of kilowatts that we are already, you can work on my wording, but that we have already got locked in to maintain our NEEM 2.0 tariff arrangement. And that the location is to be determined based on several factors, including visual, property lines, cost associated with ground mount versus carport.
I'll second.
Can I speak as to why I'm going to
course.
vote against it?
Yeah.
I think it's just too premature in a way. I mean, I think, you know, I looked at the bills. We're paying a lot of money for electricity right now. That's true. We're spending well over $8,000 a month for electricity for this campus. You know, the gym and, I guess it includes the high school, the comm school. That was the numbers you gave us.
Yeah.
You know, this would pay, I mean, a 200 kilowatt system would be about 2/3 what we anticipate the electrical need for the full campuses, based on the 2021 study. So that's let's say a savings of potentially 2/3 of the $8,000 a month. So that's, let's say, $5,500 a month, so $60,000 a year. In a 25-year system, you know, it'll pay for itself over 25 years. I don't see the 9.2-year or 7.6-year ROI that is quoted in here. The math isn't that up for me. And I live off the grid. So, I think it's just the numbers don't add up to me, and you're going ahead without understanding the numbers. And I think that's a foolhardy thing to do.
And I'm sure you've studied the numbers pretty closely. Do you have?
I'm not an expert on financial analysis
Right,
of
yeah.
return on investment, but I was satisfied that the answer to the question was that the analysis is the same as last time, which is that it is a 6.7 to 7.7 year return on the investment, with a positive return after that. I believe it said something like $79,000 a year in electricity costs, which is pretty consistent with our past 6 months of bills that Jason provided and we looked at as far as our usage. So I feel pretty confident that if we can get it built for anywhere near the prices they're giving us, even a little bit above that with the 30% tax credit, that it's a really good investment since we have a 25-year warranty on it. And it starts paying back, and basically paying off, operations costs of electricity, after year 7. To me, that's essentially, it's going to really help our bottom line after the first, 7 to 8 years. And I think it's a small investment to spend what I believe Tom and Mark said was, $50,000 to $60,000 at most to get to the point where we'll have bids and know whether it's in our price range or not. A lot of that 50 or 60,000 is at 6 months or more from now, not right now, which is why I think we should move forward, because what we're really talking about is in the next, like Michael said, 3 or 4 months. We're probably only talking about $10,000 or $20,000. And to me, that is worth the investment to find out, to drill down.
I appreciate your skepticism, and Tom said in one of his communications, getting bidders might prove to be difficult, and I would not. I acknowledge that there could be a time in the future, notwithstanding if we approve this, that we might come back to this and say, well, we can't build it for anywhere near what it was estimated, and we have to reconsider. And there's the other component, which we talked about for quite a few years now, is that it's the environmental right thing to do that we're moving towards. So I think for me, that's a significant piece of why I would like to move forward.
I mean, I certainly agree that it's environmentally the right thing to do. I think, we're already taking a system that's only 2/3 of what we know or we anticipate is needed. So we're still going to be, our carbon footprint is going to be substantial. And we've made it more substantial by switching to all electric everything. And that's just decisions we made at the time we made them, not gainsaying that. But I do not understand their analysis on the ROI. I mean, if you look on whatever page it is, 1, 2, 3, 7, a system that is going to produce 296,000. We're only going for 200,000 kilowatt hours. And then we say that, but the big change in terms of the information on this grid is where it's down below where it says annual electrical cost, which was estimated in 2021 at $79,000, and that's, over $100,000 now, and continuing to rise. But we're not saving enough money over the period of time, I don't think. I mean, I don't know where the numbers are breaking down.
I believe the 296,000 is a 1-year kilowatt hour production out of an array that is the size of a 217 kilowatt DC
Right,
size.
I get that too.
Right, so those aren't inconsistent with one another.
No, those two are consistent, but what I'm saying is if we assume that this was designed for 0 net use, right? So that's anticipating that the the need is 296 kilowatt hours a year, right? And I think, you know, at 200, I don't have my math on, but we have a current rate of what we're paying PG&E that's, I think, north of 35 cents a kilowatt hour. Is that what I got off of the chart that Jason sent us?
It's not tiered.
What?
It's tiered, no? Or is it not tiered?
I don't,
We don't get a
I
tier.
don't know
On
what-
average, you're saying?
on average, right?
Okay.
So again, that gets to where we're, you know, at $100,000 a year in what the utility bill is. How much do we have to knock off of that per year to justify spending $1.2 million? You know, $1.2 million.
Keep in mind the 30% rebate, right? Isn't that?
Okay, right, so you're saying.
Which we only get by spending it. We only get the.
We're only spending $900,000, right?
Right, we only get the rebate when we spend it. And it's a significant,
I guess I don't understand how, if we aren't, we could, I mean, any system that produces solar energy that is free rather than the electricity that we're producing and does that enough to pay for itself over time is worth it, even if we're using millions of kilowatt hours a
But our
year.
experience.
Creating a small system is still,
Our experience at the high school is that we've underperformed every year.
at the
I mean,
middle school.
at the KAKX schools, we've underperformed our expectations almost every year.
Yeah.
We spent over $1 million for that system, and we've received, you know, we're now maybe in our 15th year, we haven't paid for it yet. in
yeah.
terms of savings.
It's to me, that was, as I think I said before, the laser disc of solar systems that we shouldn't have chosen. I chose not to put that on my own house after doing the research. It wasn't, you know, what we're looking at putting in is the DVD or
Well, I
whatever,
don't think
streaming.
I don't
It
think we have-
is
we have-
the
we-
adopted technology.
We don't have the site for the DVD. We have too much fog, and, you know, to have, you know, 100% best condition, right?
So, but all of that was considered. The weather
No,
was
no,
considered
exactly.
in creating their,
I just think that,
Modeling.
all I'm trying to tell you is that I think your payout is gonna be a lot more than 7.7 years.
Fair enough.
It's gonna be 20 years.
let's say it is 20 years.
And then at
Let's
20
say it's
years,
15 or
you're
20
gonna need
years.
substantial reinvestment to maintain the same savings.
Do you think he's off by that? I mean, depending on the size, his shortest was under 6 and his longest was almost 8, right? He had-
I don't know what he's, you know, how he's doing that. I don't see his homework there. Just a number he's spat out. I just think that the ROI is an attractive number, but I just don't trust it.
I feel like for this argument to have any validity, there needs to be either a written dialogue between Michael and Sage or a public one at a board meeting. Otherwise, there's too many unknowns in the argument, going back and forth in terms of where the glitches are or where the disagreements are about calculations.
Yeah, I agree. 'Cause I don't want to throw out your critique.
Right.
But I don't know, I'm not the expert. I want to believe our hired consultant also.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, given the strength of your concerns, we should ask Tom to join us next Tuesday and do a final vote then, and maybe ask him to be prepared to answer these questions.
I think that would be a really good idea. If not that, then an email dialogue back and forth or something.
Yeah,
And-
or maybe you can prepare us an updated, even a one-pager that has what he sent us by email with a little bit of,
Because we got the
a little better
ROI from
explanation
him.
of what the, you know, it's got ROI on it, it's got simple
Yeah.
payback on it, but a little bit explanation of how he got there,
Yeah.
showing his work a little bit.
I mean, another way to say the same thing I'm saying, if we're projecting a bill of $100,000, and we reduce that bill to $30,000, that means, let's say 2/3, 1/3, our bill is gonna be $66,000, or our savings is $66,000
Annually.
annually, right? So 66,000 times 20 years is about what the system is designed to cost. That, to me, is 20-year ROI, return on investment, not a 6.7 or 7.7.
And I would perhaps doubt your reasoning without Tom's some back and forth from Sage.
Yeah, because that's
But
drastically different than what he's suggesting, so.
even so, given the environmental issue, given the temperature in most of California today, to me, it's worth it if it takes 20 years to pay back. That's not, it's just, it can't be the only argument, is whether we're saving money or not.
I agree.
Especially in a place that is educating children.
Well, we have a motion and a second on the table. I proposed maybe bringing it back on Tuesday with some more information from Tom and hopefully his presence to answer any questions. Do we want to go forward with
I'm
the
happy
motion?
to pull,
Yeah.
because I appreciate your concern, Michael. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, good.
all right, so the motion has been withdrawn. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I just think
on-
maybe you could put together an email or at least communicate with Jason clearly, kind of like what more you'd like to see from him. I think that'd probably help.
Okay.
So he's not kind of blindsided by it, so he can maybe do his homework. And if there can be an email dialogue that Jason shares with all of us in the interim, great, to get us, more information before the meeting.
Yeah.
And I saw you just wrote to SHN also, so maybe have some more information from them as well.
Do we have any public comment about either whether or not to go forward with solar, what size of an array, where the locations of any ground mount or carport locations should be? We will be bringing this back on Tuesday, so this is not the last chance to speak to it.
I see no one.
Okay. Let's move on to 7.2. Meg will present the 24-25 budget.
Okay. I need screen sharing, Aaron. Let's see, how do I do this? Okay, can you see my screen? Okay. So I'm going to go over the proposed budget for next year, 24-25. So to begin with, this is an update of this current year budget. So we update it to estimated actuals to get a good starting point. So since second interim, our revenue is up. Half of it is because of the P2 property taxes were higher by 77,600. I added in the local grants, donations, and reimbursements since second interim, about 67,000. And then there were some minor changes to federal and state revenue. And then on the expenditure side, our expenditures were reduced by about 77,000. And if you kind of come down here, we had a couple of things happen in capital. We had capital outlay that we thought we were going to be able to purchase the cafeteria vehicle and generator with the KIT grant, which was 85,000, and that's moving to next year. And then universal meals reimbursement in the cafeteria are coming in higher than we projected. So we were able to reduce the transfer out there. So that's about 109,000 transfers out that we that helped with our revenue. Salary benefits, salaries and benefits were up slightly because of additional duties and just kind of true ups of numbers. And then books and supplies and services and operations were so books and supplies, kind of increased because of donations. And then on services and operations, we had an increase in insurance cost for the AB 218 sexual harassment insurance. That's everybody has it in the state. So, and then I also went through and I reduced areas of the budget that it didn't look like we were going to spend. So in all, we have our deficit spending is better by $230,000. So we went from 398 to 168, and our ending fund balance went from 1,000,009 to 2,000,001, 2,000,002. So any questions on estimated actuals? No. Okay, so this next section is kind of on the governor's budget. And so the governor's budget, he's projecting a $27.6 billion deficit for 24-25. And a lot of this was due because they built this 24-25 budget on assumptions from prior years of higher revenues that didn't materialize. And then in addition to projecting higher revenues that didn't materialize in the year, they carried those higher projections out into the multi-year projection. So their multi-year projection was pretty much overstated. So what happened because of it, it created an overpayment to schools of the Prop 98 money in 22, 23, and 23, 24. And so the way the governor wanted to address the deficit spending was to have large reductions outside of education, outside of Prop 98. And he wanted to do an $8.8 billion accounting shift and internal borrowing. And then he wants to spend down the $8.4 billion in the school stabilization reserve. So what happens with that is that the accounting shift that he wants to do really skirts the rules of Prop 98. And so this is where CTA stepped up and said, wait a minute, you're not staying within the constitutional rules of Prop 98, which in the long run will affect schools. So if the governor had gone through with what he wanted to do in doing these accounting shifts, long-term, schools would have lost money because the Prop 98 base would have been reduced. And so the loss to schools would have been kind of like in the $5 billion area. So at the end of May, CTA and the governor reached an agreement where he's going to withdraw the accounting maneuvers. They're going to suspend the Prop 98 for 23-24, and they're going to create a maintenance factor for the $5.5 billion that eventually will be paid back to schools. Because we're basic aid, some of this stuff doesn't really affect us directly, but it affects us indirectly. So for schools, they've agreed to maintain the May revision proposed funding for 24-25, and they're going to use inter-year deferrals. They're going to still spend down the reserves, and they're going to take a loan from the general fund. And so when they suspend Prop 98 for 23-24, schools will retain the 22-23 Prop 98 base, and that's where this $5.5 billion comes in that they're going to pay back to schools. And then in 24-25, it's not suspended, and we go back to our base calculations and going forward. So the risks for us, for schools, there could be possible reductions in existing programs and kind of the rescinding of unallocated grants. So like the art, music, instructional material block grants, any unallocated money might be taken back. The learning emergency block grant, any unspent funds might be taken back. So any of these state grants that aren't fully spent could potentially be taken away from us. It also creates a long-term obligation to schools. And so that in itself could lead to future reductions for schools. And like I say, while our funding isn't directly impacted by it, some of our other fundings could be impacted by it. So, and then because they have this maintenance factor that they have to pay back, they're going to need to see significant growth in the Prop 98 funding for 25-26 to maintain the current levels of where we are. So that could also create cuts to programs in future years. And then these last two things, cash deferrals and the maintenance factor paid through restricted programs, those wouldn't affect us at all because our cash comes from property taxes and we really wouldn't be paid anything with the maintenance deferral. So it's kind of a mess, but that's where we are. So these are the planning factors at May revision. So the COLA for 24-25 is 1.07%. And if you'll remember last year or in 23-24, the COLA was 8%. And the year before that, the COLA was 13%. So those are the things that were driving this $8.8 billion overpayment to schools. You know, he thought he had the money. He was using one-time money to continue ongoing expenditures. And so he was giving high COLAs. But as we know now, they weren't sustainable. So the COLA is going back to a more normal level, 1.07 for 24-25, about 3% for 25-26, and 3.08 for 26-27. The CalSTRS rate is going to stay flat throughout the three multi-year period. CalPERS goes up from 27.05 in 24-25 up to 28% by 26-27. The other thing that could affect us is the minimum wage increase goes up every year. On January 1 of every year, I want to say it's $16 an hour, but it might not be, but $16.50 January 1, 2025, and then $17 and $17.40. And then UTK doesn't really affect us because it's paid as part of LCFF. So it's basically we don't get it. And then the block grant goes up by the COLA, the mandated block grant. And so for us, the mandated block grant averages about $20,000 to $22,000 a year. So this slide talks about the local control funding formula. So this section up here is the assumptions that are put into the local control funding formula. So this is the year that the budget year, this is the year we're just finishing up. This section down here, the LCFF entitlement, this is the calculation if we were a LCFF ADA funded school. So for 24-25, we'd be funded at about $5.4 million. Because we're basic aid, we receive our local funding sources, and so we're actually funded at $8 million. This section down here has to do with the LCAP, and so this calculates this calculates the supplemental concentration grant and the percentage that we need to improve or increase services, and that's what that's what we're trying to do in the LCAP. So for 24-25, our total supplemental concentration dollars are $871,000, and it translates to 15.4%. So that's what we need to increase or improve services in the LCAP. So this pretty much takes the whole budget and compares it to the estimated actuals. I have this timber tax highlighted because I believe in the stuff that I gave you in the packet. I said that the timber tax was estimated at 160, but it's really estimated at 120, not 160. So I wanted to highlight that. Anyway, this is how we look compared to estimated actuals 23-24. So total revenues are going to be down. Taxes are up. Secured taxes are estimated at 2.5% increase. Timber taxes at 120. We resume the deferred maintenance transfer out of 25,000. The LCFF and EPA, that's down slightly. The EPA is down slightly because of ADA projections. District of choice is flat. Federal, state, and local revenue, all the one-time dollars have been taken out. And then the last one is a transfer in, and that's from MCN. So MCN is projecting that they'll be able to increase the transfer to the district every year. So the other thing I want to point out here is in federal funding and state funding. we're pretty much, if with federal funding, we're pretty much done with the one-time COVID dollars. We'll have them all spent when we close the books in, when I come to you with the closed books in September. So really what's left of federal funding is stuff that we get generally every year. So it's the special ed, IDEA, and then the title programs, Title I, Title II, Title IV, and then the REAP program. So those don't generally change a whole lot every year. So this, I'm guessing, is kind of where we'll be. State funding, we're also kind of done with one-time dollars. So the normal ongoing dollars for state funding are lottery. I'm going to skip over these two for a minute. So lottery, SPED, early intervention and mental health dollars, the Prop 28, art, music, and schools. Ethnic studies, this really is one time. We've got like 4,600 that we just keep carrying over. We need to spend it in 24-25 though. And then the STIRS on behalf, this is just an accounting entry. But going back to CTIG and ELOP. So CTIG, we budget that at like a base level, and then Tobin kind of decides, what is he going to do with the program? What are we going to ask for, and what are we able to meet in the match? So the CTIG can vary from year to year, and then ELOP, that we received to do the program down at the community center. And so we know, because we can't meet all of the requirements of ELOP, some of the money that we receive here will go back every year. So then expenditures. So salary and benefits, we reduced staff in here in salary and benefits. We have the 2% step and column increase for certificated, and about 2.5 step and column increase for classified. And then it also includes the 3% on salary schedule agreement. And then the benefits are at the planning factors. The public disclosure for the 3% agreement, that'll come at the next board meeting on June 11th. And then books and supplies were all reduced for one-time items. And then here in capital outlay, you see the KIT grant purchases coming back. So in the time that we had them in the budget and I'm moving them forward, the cost of some of this, of what we're going to buy, has gone up. So it's up slightly, but it's all covered by the KIT grant. And then the transfers out, we had some one-time transfers out last year because of the USDA grant. And I think that's it, just because of the USDA grant. So total expenditures are down to 2.4 million from 10.4 million from 10.8 million. Our deficit spending projected in 23-24 is 168 and 558 in 24-25. So we spend down from 2.1 million estimated beginning balance to 1.6 million. And then, and we meet our 4%. And then down here is the balance of what Fund 17 is at the end of the year for 24-25, 920,000. Any questions? So this, again, I just threw this in here because, again, I made the mistake of, in my documents to you, saying that taxes was at 160 when really it's at 120. And this, is something I think we've all seen before, tells what the projected taxes are going to be for the ongoing years. So this is a multi-year projection for 24-25 budget, 25-26, 26-27. So it's pretty straightforward. Taxes, I continue with the 2.5% increase in secured taxes, and I maintain timber tax at 120. We continue with the deferred maintenance transfer, 25,000. The LCFF and EPA is, determined by the calculator, and it goes, the reason it goes down is because of the EPA and kind of lower projected ADA. District of choice stays the same every year. And then for federal, state, and local income, I increased the revenue by about 1% per year. And so we go up, from 9.8 million, 9.9, almost 10 million, then 10.1 million in 26, 27. So on the expenditure side, during negotiations, the multi-year projection that I gave to you and what I believe we determined that we could afford the 3% increase included additional cuts of about 270,500 in 25, 26. So this multi-year projection and the multi-year projection that you'll see next week with the public disclosure includes additional cuts in 25, 26 of $270,500. So, and that's taken out in the salary and benefits in 25, 26. All years in the salaries and benefits, it includes the step and column increase for certificated and classified. And then the benefits are at the planned rates. Books, services, and operations, they're increased, one-time things are taken out from there. Okay. And then they're increased about 2% per year for, inflation. The capital outlay is gone after 24, 25, so that stays zero. And then the transfers out go up by about 2% per year as well. So we have deficit spending of 558,000 in 24, 25. With the cuts in 25, 26, deficit spending comes down to 207, and it's 252 in 26, 27. We go from a 2.184 beginning fund balance in 24, 25 to a 1.1 million ending fund balance in 26, 27. These are our components of ending fund balance, and each year we are able to meet the 4% reserve. And you'll see out here in 25, 26, 26, 27, I have the negotiated 2% reserve. And we have an unappropriated balance still in general fund, and we don't need to use Fund 17 to get us through the multi-year period at this point. So, and then Fund 17 grows to about 948,000 at the end of 26, 27. So any questions on this? I can't see if you guys are awake or asleep.
It's hard to know. I had one question, Meg.
Sure.
Just to make sure I understand, the 24, 25, for example, the certificated salaries there are 3.735. And then and then we make $270,000 of cuts somewhere. And those salaries only go down to 3.715. Is that because we're adding the step and column?
Right. So I took the cuts I split between certificated and classified, and so it hits all three levels. It hits the certificated salaries, classified salaries, benefits.
Thank you.
And then, so that goes down, and then because we have the step and column, it also goes up by step and column in all three categories.
Okay. And the step and column, am I right that the step and column is about 130,000 for certificated? Because the negotiation reserve is 130,000, is that right?
Yeah, so the negotiation reserve is for all class, all.
For all, okay.
Right, it's for all. So yeah, it would be, it's 2%. So it wouldn't really be 130, it'd be a little bit more than 130 because it's 2% for certificated, 2.5% about for classified.
Okay.
So it would be just a little bit more.
Okay. And am I correct that the 24, 25 salaries and benefits include the 3% negotiated increase?
Yes, they do.
And then the 25, 26, and 26, 27 do not include any increases other than the negotiation reserve of 2% that's down at the bottom?
25, 26, 26, 27, after cuts both years include step and column, and then the negotiated reserve, yes, is at the bottom.
Okay. Thanks.
So this next slide is about cash flow. So this is our cash flow in Fund 01. And you can see here in October, November, we go negative cash. And this generally happens because of how we receive our tax dollars. So we receive tax dollars in April, so you can see it up here. We received tax dollars in April, see we get 2 million, and then we get, very little, very little. July, we receive very little as we go along, and we don't receive a next tax payment until December. So in October, November, we generally go negative. It just kind of happens. So we also do a cash flow with Fund 17 because, nobody wants to see us go negative cash. So including Fund 17, we never really go negative cash. So with Fund 17, our cash balance is projected to start in July at about almost 3 million, 2.95. And when we end in June 30th, it's going to be about 1.9 million. So this next slide is about this statement of reserve substantiation. So I don't know, probably back in 2015, schools were required to substantiate why they need a reserve higher than the required minimum. So the required minimum reserve for a district our size is only 4% of expenditures. So 4% of expenditures would be this 414,775 is that's our required reserve by the state. So we actually have reserves, unrestricted reserves that are assigned and unassigned in the general fund on top of the 4% of 402,000, and then we have the Fund 17 of 900,000. So we have $1.3 million in reserves over the required minimum. So we have to make a statement as to why that is. And so one is because the minimum reserve of 400,000 wouldn't even cover 1 month's worth of payroll. And the second reason that we just saw is that there are times when our cash flow turns negative. So if we did not have Fund 17 and our cash flow turned negative, in our county currently, they take all of the school funds, and as long as all of the 11 districts and charter schools who hold money at the county, as long as that fund is positive, they will continue to pay bills. In other county offices, they require every district to remain positive. So if our county were to change how they did business and we turned negative and they require us to be positive, there's a possibility we'd have to go out and get a loan, get a tran, and that costs money. So I think it's very prudent for us to maintain our Fund 17 where it is, so we don't have to deal with that kind of stuff.
Recording in progress.
Sorry.
And then this is the last slide. Yay, this is the other funds for 24-25. So Fund 12, the preschool fund, the child development. Let's see, we have revenues of 50,000 about for 23-24, expenditures of 106. So we backfill it by about 58,000. In 24-25, revenues are projected to be about 41,000, expenditures 105, and we'll backfill it to about 63,000. The cafeteria has revenues of about 280, expenditures of 340. We backfill about 86,000 because we have to keep a stores level. In 24-25, they'll have 218,000, expenditures of 343, so we'll backfill by about 96,000. Deferred maintenance, this is where the $25,000 goes. We didn't make it in 23-24, we suspended the transfer, so the 7,800 here is just interest. They had expenditures of about 68,000. Oh, that's wrong, that shouldn't be there. Oh, no, that is not wrong. I'm sorry. That is right. That's the transfer in from one of the USDA grants because we used Fund 14. So they have an ending balance of 190. Next year, the revenue will be the transfer in. I just kind of budgeted expenditures to match transfer in, so it kind of stays flat. Fund 15, this is where we're collecting all the expenditures for the electric school buses and all of the equipment that goes with that. So this year, we've spent everything that's kind of in, real money that's in there. We have a lot of purchase orders and whatnot in there, and entries that need to be made when the grant people pay for the buses and stuff like that. So there really is nothing in 24, 25. Fund 25, the developer fee fund, we have a beginning balance of 260 this year. We've taken in about 47,000. We spent about 19. This too had a transfer in for the USDA grant, so I think we'll have an ending fund balance about 321. Project 40,000 revenue next year. No expenditures yet, so right now, maybe about 361 at the end of next year. Fund 40 is where we capture all the stuff for the water project. And so this is the last of the first pieces, and now we're working on the next, the storage tanks. And so no money has come through yet. And then Fund 67 is the self-insurance fund, the vision fund, and the dental fund. And so this, usually our revenues and our expenditures kind of are close. Our expenditures in this really depend on how much people, how often our staff use services. So revenues look like they're going to be about 111 this year, and expenditures about 117, maybe an ending fund balance of 214. I projected revenues of 107. I left expenditures higher at 120, so maybe 201 at the end of the year. And that's all I have. Any questions?
So Meg,
Yes.
are we better off than you presented at the last interim, or are we behind because of the factors you mentioned?
Are we behind because, behind?
In other words, is the last 2 or 3 months, with the various changes that we have to reflect, have they been more positive or more negative?
I think that, I'll say they've been positive, but I think, where I was projecting for negotiations, I want to say we're kind of flat. I want to say we're more positive than negative, but really we're kind of stable from where we were at second interim. And I feel that way because because of negotiations, I was constantly updating the budget. And because of the constant update of the budget, I don't really feel like there's any surprises in this budget. There were a couple of things that in the multi-year projection for negotiations that I kind of got wrong on the revenue side. And so that amounted to a revenue of 76,000 that is not in this year and was not carried forward to other years. So in that regard, yeah, that's kind of off. But where we are in this budget, I feel pretty good about this budget because, compared to last year, we were looking at having to borrow from Fund 17. And we had a lot of ugly things going on in our budget. That's not to say by the end of this year, something doesn't happen that's out of our control at the state or federal level that cause revenues to do something we don't want it to do. Like them taking money away.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Meg.
Thanks so much, Meg.
You're welcome.
All right. Moving on to item 7.3, Rob, MCN. Good timing. No, you were a few minutes early in our book. Yeah.
I don't know that I can see that at the same time, but I guess this is our...
You can move that anywhere you want.
Anywhere I want, okay. How about that? That should work. Okay, so I'm going to kind of look over there and look at you guys here. Here's our Q3 budget report. Beautiful picture of Mendocino there. So go ahead and next slide, I guess. So our customer counts for the Q3, as you can see, we have basically lost 12 Fusion customers. We're flat on our ComShi DSL customers. And we've gained 21 open air customers and about 9 digital voice customers. What we kind of, oops, sorry, go back for just a moment if you would. Also, I kind of gave a comparison of what we did last year and kind of what we had budgeted for. So we did a little bit better on losing Fusion customers, if you can say you did a little better on losing. And we had also expected to lose some more DSL customers in CompSci and the legacy DSL customers that we just didn't lose. I do want to say that that's probably going to change with us seeing fiber in CompSci, so just kind of wait for that. And then, yeah, could have done a little better in open air, but we're kind of pretty close to what we budgeted for in those numbers. Same with digital voice, could have been a little better, but it comes and goes in waves, we've been noticing. So we'll see how we do towards the end of the year and in the next budget year. Next slide, please. In terms of our revenue for the third quarter, you know, we basically had a loss of $5,000-ish from what we did in the last year. And we had in February, obviously, some more income coming in than we expected, or not than we expected, but then from the last year, from what was seen, if you will. And then in March, you know, we lost about $6,000 for a total for that quarter of losing about $3,000 from our revenue down. I don't know if losing is maybe the best term to use there, but down from what we were from last year. Go to the next slide. Our expenses in January were much lower. In February and March, as you can see, they were quite a bit higher. We had a few large items that we purchased, and just, you know.
I'm reading that exactly the opposite of what you're saying.
I'm sorry, am I?
That in January, your expenses were higher than the year before, and in February and March, they were lower than you had budgeted, or lower than the year before. I'm not sure what the budget is, you don't give us that.
You are exactly correct, I apologize. That is exactly, I'm looking at that exactly backwards, and again, that glare, there we go, that's a little better. So yeah, as you can see, our expenses were actually indeed lower in February and March. And so overall, our expenses were a bit less. Some of this is due to losing some of our Fusion customers, because that's a pass-through income, as we know. So there's an expense associated with that.
And I think you said in a committee meeting that in March you got rid of some dead accounts that would reflect in, you know, on your expense side.
We did. We got rid of a lot of debt accounts, and we wrote off some debt this year too. That sort of, and I think we'll see some of that later reflected in some of the other numbers. So let's see. So this is the net change from where our current kind of standing is from last year to this year. And last year, you know, we had gained some money, and then this year we lost a little bit of money in January in terms of our net. And so one thing I want to point out before I continue is, like, this quarter, I noticed this from last year too, this quarter we tend to spend a little bit more money, whether it's due to expenses or other things that are happening. It just always seems to be this third quarter. So you'll see that reflected in February from last year. We lost a fair amount of money, and not quite as much in February this year and March, but there's still a loss. So if we continue on.
So I think you know, that change is misleading.
It is, and I
think, you know, what you've got there, you know, the first one makes sense. January makes sense. So year over year, you're showing a change of $19,000 to the negative. But in 2020, for February, for 2023, 22, 23, and 23, 24, you actually have a positive change of $12,000, not a negative change.
Right.
And the same for March, is a positive change year over year. You lost $27,000 less
And that's the thing of it, we lost $27,000 less.
So, I mean, those should be, in terms of change, that's a positive number. They should be green.
Yeah, and I kind of went back and forth with this a little bit, so I apologize for the muddiness of it.
Well, because that's the only way that your bottom line would work out, you know.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you've added up those three negative changes, you'd be minus 60-something thousand.
exactly. And and the thing is too, though, that these numbers reflect the change to our net of everything that we have, right? So, yes, and it is a little misleading there. So I apologize for that. If we could go to the next slide. So this kind of really will sort things out. Where we ended with everything in our audit of last year, we're at 164,483, and then our audit that ended in this calendar year, although it's labeled 23-24, sorry about that. Basically, we had a net change of $33,000 and some change that we added to, you know, our total assets.
Should that be 21, 22, and 22, 23?
It should be, yeah. I just noticed that it said 22, 23, and then 23, 24.
Because we haven't gotten to the end of the year.
Yeah, sorry about that. Another mistake there.
So I think if you go back to the first slide.
Please.
Okay, next slide.
Yeah.
All right, now look at, so there you look at your income for the quarter was $562,000. Right, if you go to the next, oh, you didn't give us the data really for the next slide, which is expenditures. You gave us year-on-year change, but you didn't say what your expenditures were for the quarter. But my guess is
Go to the next slide.
that oh, there you did.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So if you notice, that's actually 571, 556, and go back again, Aaron, versus 562. For the quarter, you have a positive balance of $9,000.
Right. So, and again, like, so the way that these expenses are is that basically the change from last year to this year is that difference.
Right.
So this number doesn't represent, so go back a slide if you would. I don't believe this number represents the difference between our revenue and our expense, right? It's the difference between the last year and this
Right.
year.
I'm suggesting that the difference, I mean, or how we're doing at the moment, the fiscal year and whatever is a more important number. Because we know that the fusion product is shrinking.
Right.
So that you're always going to have changes in the negative on that basis alone. But, you know, if I were looking at the way you presented the numbers, I think that MCN was doing worse than it was the year before. But in fact, you're doing better at maintaining your expenditures under your revenue.
That's correct, yeah. And I'm glad that you can see that. So, and I kind of went back and forth a little bit, you know, when I was writing this out with my financial person, you know, and so it was, go to the next slide if you would. It was really this slide that took me for a loop with these negative numbers, as you pointed out. But I think at the end of the day, the takeaway here is that by cutting our expenses and being very careful about where we're outputting money last year, we're able to actually make a profit, which was good. Yeah. So any other questions about that? Or?
I think I asked you at the committee meeting, but I forgot what you said. I want to ask again. So with losing customers for DSL or Fusion, is there a possibility of gaining much from fiber? Has anybody in COMSHE signed up through us? Is there any last mile or whatever opportunity with fiber as things stand, or is there going to be in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so let's just focus on COMSHE since that was part of your question.
Yeah.
Right now, as it stands, there isn't an opportunity for us to like resell that fiber. At least not in a way that I can find through a reseller program with AT&T, you know, maybe barring buying fusion, fiber lines directly from AT&T and reselling them to a customer at a markup. Really, why would somebody do that? And you know, so where we do have the opportunity is people in CompSci who are ditching their landline and their DSL line, for instance, may want to sign up for a digital voice line. Now, that's not a lot of income, but it's some, and every little bit is going to really help. So does that sort of answer your
Yeah,
question with there?
it does.
Yeah. Now, and if we look at the overall, you know, ecosystem of our services, we can sell fiber now to people and to businesses, and there is possibly some money to be made in that. That is through an AT&T reseller program that we're a part of. We're calling it fiber tiered, and so we've already sold 2 of those, and we have a third one sort of in the queue, if you will, that they're deciding on that. So everywhere we can find an opportunity to create some income, I think we really need to pursue it. Yeah.
I was curious, you were showing the list of customers, it's not a lot of customers. What other revenue sources do we have? I mean, for example, I know I have a few domains parked that trickle in a little money.
Yeah.
But that wasn't on there anywhere.
No, those didn't really seem like they were, I don't know if pertinent's the right word, but they're not such a large amount of income that I didn't feel it was worth putting it in here. Probably in the, at some point I can provide some of those numbers if you'd like, but to answer your question, really the income sources that we have right now, like Fusion has been the biggest one. And now
There's still
Open Air.
1,300 Fusion customers, right?
Yeah, it's 1290 now-ish. It's dwindling down a little bit, but so I mean, and that's a fair number. You know, it's a lot. And then we have the Open Air customers where we're starting to.
And what's our number there?
Increase there. We're in the 370s, something like that. 390s. I don't remember what exactly.
Okay, no,
in my head
exactly.
what I presented at the subcommittee meeting, but it's around there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's starting to pick up, and that's an income that's coming in that's valuable to us. We have a good number of digital voice customers. I mean, you know, while the profit margin is high on that, the income, you know, the amount of income from that is not as great as it is from like a wireless customer or from even a Fusion customer. So you got to take that somewhat with a grain of salt. You know, the other services that we have, you know, are obviously domain and website. Email is actually a pretty good one that makes a fair amount of money, believe it or not, through folks that have left a lot of messages on the server. We charge for extra space for that because hard drives are expensive, and there's a fair amount of income that's generated from that each month. And that's a good thing because people feel safe leaving their email on our servers. It is safe. It's a great place to keep it, but it'll cost you. So, yeah.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I was just curious about that kind of the overall picture.
Yeah.
So overall, and how many of those customers, do you have any idea, are redundant? Do you think between different services that we offer?
Yeah, so my mom's a good example of that. She lives in Fort Bragg. Yeah. She has a Fusion line, and she switched to Open Air, but she did not want to get rid of her Fusion line because she wants a landline. So
she's redundant.
There's not really a lot, I would say, but there are a few, you know, that are redundant. Man, I just total guess, like out of the clouds, but maybe 20 or under. Okay. You know, I mean, and that might be even a high estimate.
Right.
There's probably more synergy between people who are on Open Air and digital voice at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of folks that have the Open Air have been happy to move to the digital voice.
I mean, so our entire customer base is maybe a couple thousand customers or something.
Yeah, at this point, yeah. So anywhere that we can find a way to increase that customer base is, you know, really important, and will be going forward for sure. You know.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions about that?
I think the board would, you know, I know you report to the two of us who are on the MCN committee. But if you could put together, not so much the year-over-year changes, but how this year stacks up with the current, numbers. And I assume some of that's going to be in the budget you're going to go to next, because you have to have that all
Some of
laid
it
out.
will be, yeah.
So maybe, I'm anticipating what you'll show there.
Well, I think I'd be happy to come back at a future meeting and give some more, some more detailed numbers and things if you guys would find that useful. I mean, so, yeah. Okay, I guess let's move on to.
Meg, do you happen to have a copy? I don't have one in my folder here.
Of,
MCN's budget, the most recent one?
is that the spreadsheet, Rob?
I think that's the spreadsheet. I thought I had sent you this presentation and.
I got this one, but I put it in a different folder and it's not here. And my apologies,
That's okay.
because it's on my other computer. Is there a way to present from the spreadsheet?
Yeah, it's not a PowerPoint, so,
Is it on the website? No?
sure, let's open it up and take a look. And I'll link it.
Actually, as long as everybody, let's see. As long as the people at home can't see my, my screen anymore, I can go.
You can see it on the big screen if that matters. So while we're waiting for this, again, apologies for being a little bit delayed. Did I miss anything fun or exciting?
Well, you could probably answer one question. Are you projecting a budget surplus for this year?
Yeah, so that was difficult this year. In the end, yes, I am estimating a budget surplus this year, but we really had to kind of make some decisions and try and find what would work best so that we would not, have a loss. Having said that, it's a small margin, but it is definitely a surplus that is projected for the year. And, my hope is obviously that we do better. But that's why we kind of adjust the budget throughout the year to kind of see how we're doing and make sure if we need to make adjustments, we can do that. But it's a pretty solid plan, I think, for what we have, but it's a little tight.
So you talk about this current year that we're ending?
No, not this year that we're ending. I'm talking about the next year. Did I misunderstand your question?
Yes. So I'm asking
Oh.
for the year that we're ending, are we going to be showing a surplus?
Gotcha. Yes, it looks like we are on track to show a surplus for this year that we're ending.
And last year you said we had a $30,000 or $40,000 surplus after the $40,000 payment to the district.
That's correct. Yeah.
So this year we're looking for a smaller surplus in addition to what the MCN pays the district.
Correct. Yeah. So we'll still, obviously we're still paying the $40,000 to the district, and then we'll have a surplus as well. It's a living, breathing thing. I don't know how else to put it, but you can make all these plans, and then there's these last minute things that kind of come up. So, but I've tried to leave a fair amount of padding there. So I think we're going to do okay. I'm pretty good. This is the end of this budget. Yes.
This is what I got.
Yeah, but there should be one from me. So I think it's that.
Jason, how many school districts in Mendocino County?
10. Yeah, that's sorry, technical difficulties, I think, addressed.
No problem.
I actually have another presentation talking some more about the third quarter budget that goes along with what we already saw, that I think can provide some more context and maybe possibly answer some more of the other questions that we had. So some of it will be a repeat of what we've seen, but it's more information that I think will be valuable and is worth talking about. I feel bad that I can't look at you guys and look at this at the same time, so sorry, I feel a little awkward here. So here's the third quarter report with some nice visual aids in terms, as well as a graph, which sort of shows. Can I make that full screen?
Yeah, it looks like this is the document that was included with the board packet.
It is,
Okay.
yeah. So here you can see some of our more complete revenue numbers of what we budgeted for and what we actually brought in. So this is without the differences that were in the other document. These are just kind of like the raw numbers of that stuff. So yeah, scroll down a little bit. So you can see our actuals. This is pretty clear and stark where we see that kind of dip, and that's that third quarter dip, I guess, that I'll call it, that happens. So go ahead and scroll down a little, please. In here is our expenses, and so you can see in here from what we were at last year to what we're at this year. Again, we did 23, or we did that correctly, 23, 24. So we were a little lower in some of our expenses than we had budgeted for, which is a good thing, and that reflects back to that, well, I'm not sure what the right word is, but like a misnomer of how we saw it in the other document where it had that negative number. And we were a little higher in our expenses for February as well as for March. And then overall, we were a little higher in our expenses than we had budgeted for. So, and then there's a graph sort of showing that. If we go down some more. And here we talk about our net change maybe in a little bit more detail than we saw on the other slide or presentation. But basically, I think the graph is a better representation than the actual hard numbers, unfortunately, because scroll up just a tiny little bit. As you were pointing out, Michael, these are listed as negative numbers, but you know, we basically dropped our net in this last quarter 31,000 last year, and then in this quarter we gained 5,622. So yeah, showing it as a negative number is a misnomer, if you will. But so you can see in the graph basically kind of how things were going for our actual. We did drop and then slowly came back up, but we were lower than where we had budgeted, but a little bit better than last year for this quarter. That's the important part. So basically, there was a net loss in quarter 3. I'm going to read through this. This was due part. We had some construction costs. Maybe this will help also answer some of your questions that you had. So we had some construction costs for some new AP sites, and this is really an investment. We're going to hopefully get a number of customers out of that. And I say hopefully, keep in mind that we literally have like people on waiting lists for these AP sites. So that's good. We did have a productive quarter. As I mentioned, we started selling fiber tiered to businesses in Mendocino and Fort Bragg. You know, we have 2 signed contracts and probably another one. We're hoping that maybe we'll see some more businesses want to take advantage of this. It's not an inexpensive product, but if you're running a business and you really have a need for dedicated upload speeds, it's going to be something that I think is worth the business purchasing. Yeah, that's fine. Connectivity. At the end of quarter 3, here's some more hard numbers. We had 1,379 Fusion customers. Again, that's lowered since we wrote this. And we had about 1,216 at the end of this quarter 3. Our anticipated loss was about 11 and a half, I think it said, and we were pretty close to that mark.
It says long range open air. What's long range?
So long range open air is the customer base that we purchased from CK Broadband out of Ukiah, and they had fixed wireless customers from Fort Bragg up to Westport, and so we folded it into our open air ecosystem, if you will, and called it long range. So we have actually completed paying off those customers, so those are now our customers completely. They're not like, you know, there's no debt to keep continuing purchasing them. So those customers, you know, are bringing in income to us completely now.
And is there other residences that could be tapped into in those same areas?
In terms of the long range?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it's, to be clear, they're wireless customers from Fort Bragg to Westport. So some are residents, some are vacation rentals. There's the Westport store is a business that uses the service.
Wireless, like not like cell.
No, but like line of sight, fixed wireless.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Like further reaches system.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So so the point is, though, that we've purchased those customers and we've finished purchasing them. They're no longer, you know, a debt that we have to continue paying for. Now, I will say that with any system, time goes on and things need to be upgraded eventually, and soon I have some plans to try and upgrade them, get them into some faster speeds. You know, their equipment is not new and the cutting line, the latest, greatest stuff. So we want to continue to make sure we're providing people a good quality product. And so we're planning some upgrades for that open-air long-range system. So we kind of left off talking about the loss of Fusion customers, and then we talked about some open-air customers, long-range. Man, that glares really bad. Let's see. Okay. Now you're fine. So here's some hard numbers where we had in the end of 2023, we had 249 open-air customers. That's not including long-range, I don't believe. And then at the end of Q3 this year, we had 300, so an increase of 51. I do want to say that for a new product, I've been really surprised to see people coming and going from the service, and I think that that's due to the demographic of where it is. It's in Fort Bragg. We're in the downtown district. There's a lot of businesses coming and going, and so I remember when we first started Fusion, every time we got new customers, we just basically kept getting new customers. We didn't see kind of a loss of a couple. I mean, not a lot, but some. So this surprised me a little bit, that trend. So due to that fact, we really, increased by 51 customers. So, and that's pretty good. We did have the 73 open-air long-range customers in the end of 2023 in that third quarter. We have 70 today. We did convert a couple of those to open-air regulars, so they were getting faster speeds and paying less money, basically. Let's see, a couple customers moved away. I think a couple came back, like somebody sold a house in Westport, so we lost them, and then they came back, that kind of thing. So we have a grand total of 402 kind of in wireless customers, if you will. So some more hard numbers. At the end of Q3, we had 722 digital voice extensions. So those are actual phone lines at businesses and residents that are digital voice. So that doesn't necessarily say how many customers that we have. So each extension is a cost for each customer. So one customer may have 5 extensions, for instance, if you're a busy business or household with 4 teenagers and you want a phone line to yourself. So I can scroll down just a little bit. So at the end of this quarter, we had 822, so we did gain about 100 extensions over the year, which is pretty good. Open-air access points, we talked about that a little bit. I just want to touch on that again some more. We've signed a couple contracts in Fort Bragg for some new open-air access points, which we are actively building. So we spent a little bit of money on that in this third quarter. We also are looking at possibly some open-air access points here in Mendocino. And so, as long as we can reliably deliver somebody an internet connection, I feel that we should take that opportunity and do it. I should point out that this is our 30th anniversary. So MCN has been in business for 30 years. And one of the things that we wanted to do is try and celebrate that. I think it's really important to keep us in the community's mind-eye that we're here. We've been here for 30 years, and we want to try and celebrate that at some point. So we're kind of talking in August that we have some sort of gathering, a barbecue or something like that. Are there any suggestions or ideas from the board of would Friendship Park be a good place? I kind of wanted to do something that is community involved, so that if there's some way to get the community actively showing up to, celebrate MCN, I think that's a worthy endeavor. So at some point, feel free to email me if you have any thoughts or suggestions about that. August is pretty close. I've been finding that time just flies when you get really busy, so keep that in mind. Okay, so that's, any other questions about the quarter three thing? I know I've probably taken a little bit extra.
You found
time
your
here.
budget for next year?
I do, it's unfortunately in the spreadsheet form, so it's not all broken out. Throw that up. Okay, so we're gonna have to make that really big, please, because I'm a little blind. And we can scroll down.
Yeah, this is the document that was included with the board packet at 7.3A.
Correct, yeah. Basically, you know, this is the 3-year projection of our budget for what we have coming this next year and the subsequent years. So basically, you know, we pretty much tried to keep things as they were that we know work. And obviously, things will have to be adjusted as different things happen. We've focused on, you know, some investment in infrastructure for the open air product, and possibly some other things, like if there's a fiber opportunity to do, that kind of thing. So you can see kind of at the bottom line here, we're projecting, at least for next year, that will make about an $11,000 profit. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier when I misunderstood you, Michael, that yeah, it's a little tight. I would have liked that to be a little higher, but I also wanted to be realistic too about what I was projecting. So if things go well, then in the next year, we'll make about a $20,000 profit. And assuming that all those things that we've been planning stay on track, then, you know, we would be hoping to see about a $52,000 profit.
And with all those, you have to add 40,000 onto each one of those, right? Because
No, that's
already included.
in
that
this budget.
includes the
Correct,
district.
and I'd also like to point out that this next budget year, we have budgeted for 42,000 to donate to the district.
This third line up at the bottom.
42,500, I think it was.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So, a different way of saying that is that you're increasing the contribution to the district from 40,000 to 42,500.
Correct.
Plus, you anticipate being profitable over the next 3 years, as you were this past year or the year before.
Correct. And, you know, one of the reasons for doing this is that if we look back at the past couple of years, we have been making a profit. So that's been really important to me to kind of build our net assets, if you will, because the couple of years before me, we really spent down a lot of our net assets to the point of where I was talking with Meg and kind of like asking, hey, you know, what's the magic number if some disaster was to strike or something was to happen? What's the kind of minimum where I want to be? And so we discussed that at length, and I feel a little bit more comfortable now of where we're at. So it only makes sense that as MCN makes more money, the district should you know, get a little bit more money from that. That's why we're here, right? In my opinion. So, well, and to support the community, but I mean, obviously, they go hand in hand. So I think that's a good thing.
Great. Any other questions for Rob?
No, I'm glad we finally found a document we could say we met the test here.
Okay, good. And again, my apologies for some of the organizational issues that we had there.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay.
And it doesn't look like this is an action item. We don't need to
No.
approve the budget. Okay.
Any other questions or? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Rob. Appreciate it.
We have a question, hand up
Oh,
in the audience.
yep, a hand up in the audience, please.
Hey there, it's Sage. How you guys doing?
Hi, Sage.
I was really hoping to see the budget presentation because I'm sure these numbers were being explained, but the main question that I had for Rob, if he knows off the top of his head, is that the projected revenues next year were about $120,000 higher than this year, and I was just curious of what the sources of increased revenue were.
Yeah, I will try and answer that the best that I can off the top of my head. So we had a couple of things, an expected increase in some of our open air customers, our fiber tiered product, and are continuing to sell our digital voice product. So those are a couple of the top things that come into play there, Sage.
And so
Anything else?
I'll just say that it's, 100 and, the numbers, the revenue numbers roughly 160,000. So that's like $10,000, over $10,000 a month in increased revenue. So that just seemed like based on the customer projections in your third quarter report there, that, the numbers are trending up slowly, but the overall revenue from the fusion coming down seems to be coming down faster than your revenue projections would allow for.
Yeah, and keep in mind that we had some, I'd call it delays on getting some new open air access points. So once we get those sort of rolling out, then we'll start to see more and more customers, which will increase that revenue. That's the projection. Any other questions about that?
We have one more online.
Is that me?
Yes.
Hi, Rob, it's Teddy from Good Life.
Hi, Teddy.
You asked me or us about what suggestions, if we have any, for how to get MCN and the community involved together and do stuff that's like interactive and raise money for you guys as well.
Yeah.
And I did actually just now comment, but I wanted to make sure like whoever's listening, and if they don't read the comments, like here's what I have to say, because I personally have I think I have some great ideas about how that can happen, and I love MCN, and I have a lot of stake in the game with my kid and the whole school system and stuff. So either you guys can read it out loud, or I guess I could repeat it. I don't know how the comments on the question and answer thing work, so I'm just educating myself to the program. And this is my first comment in person at a school board meeting in years, so forgive me and bear with me. I'll learn fast, but anyway, I do have some ideas, quite a few, about that particular thing, because I am involved. So
yeah,
somebody advise me how to put my 2 cents in at an appropriate time. I'll do that.
I can't read them from here, so.
I would say, why don't you read it to us, and then we'll have it in your own words.
Sure. It's in the Q&A, but I did too. I just said a way to involve and raise funds for the MCN and teacher, for the community/MCN and the school, and also raise consciousness about what MCN is and does and is how they're a part of the school, is maybe like a teacher/parent or a teacher versus parent softball game, or like kids classes against classes in the summer or this fall, where it's like a fundraiser. And then during the summer, the comm center program can be a culinary thing where they do the concessions for that program to like raise money for the whole thing. Plus it's like sponsored by MCN, and then people know MCN and the schools are connected, and it's like up to all of us to support it. And plus it's fun and people want to be part of it. Just that's basically, I've been involved so much with my kid in those programs, and like I think that Elk has Pepper Martin, and it's very well attended by the whole coast. And if you guys did something fun like that, where the teachers and the parents could come together, you might find that becomes an annual great fundraiser thing. Like they raise a ton of money in Elk for that by donation, and you guys could do the same, and also get MCN to be appreciated more. So that's all.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if we're allowed to do that. I know that there's some question about whether or not we can sponsor sports teams, but if it's a parent-teacher type thing with, you know, sports in the schools.
Well, not necessarily a team, I guess, just like a
No, I
a
think,
school fundraiser type of thing or whatever, because you guys are owned by the school, is that not correct?
we are, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't see why they couldn't do their own fundraiser, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Thank you so much for that input. That's really cool. And
Sure, of course.
maybe you should drop me an email or something and we can talk some more about it. And
Who's that?
So my email is manager@mcn.org.
And who am I speaking with?
This is Rob.
Oh, Rob. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Rob. I'll see you over coffee soon.
Totally. A regular there.
Yeah, yeah. I'll see you and we'll talk for sure. And I'll email you if I have more thoughts. But yeah, I do have a lot of thoughts and I'll start plugging in more, but I just wanted to know what the protocol is before putting my 2 cents in the appropriate timely fashion, I guess. So thank you.
For sure, yeah. And I may have to check the rules and ask some questions of the board members or whatever to make sure we're doing the right thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think that any
It's a
collaboration,
learning.
community-wise, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Teddy. Really appreciate it.
All right, ciao.
Any other questions or? Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Thanks.
thanks. All right. On to item 7.4, which is the Local Control Accountability Plan, or LCAP. Jason.
All right, so I guess I'm going to start with by asking Meg to present the budget overview for parents, and I can share my screen to make it easier for you, Meg.
Okay.
All right, so if you can see it, you can go ahead.
Okay, so this all goes back to that whole LCFF slide in my budget presentation and the slide thereafter. So I know you can't see me circling it, but this total LCFF funds, so this big blue circle here that Jason's circling, the total LCFF funds here are made up of the taxes, the transfer out to deferred maintenance, the LCFF, EPA, and the district of choice, if you're looking at, you know, the budget spreadsheet. That's what makes up that $8.1 million. And then the rest of it, obviously, is all the other funding. And so when you come over here to the right to the LCFF funds, that total, let's see, so that total pulled out is the supplemental concentration grant. So that part of it is the $871,783, and that's the piece that we have to increase or improve services. So the text down here kind of tells you all of that. The total revenues for the district is 9.77 million, 8.21 is a local control formula, 815 is state, 450 is local, 376 is federal, and then 871,783 is generated by the supplemental concentration high needs kids, foster youth, English learner, low income students. So that's that page. This page tells us what's in the LCAP. So our total budgeted expenditures is this green box, 10,000,002. And of that, 1,734 is budgeted in the LCAP. So that's actually written into the LCAP. And I think it looks like the text kind of tells us that kind of piece of it too. And then this next page, go up one more, a little bit more, stop. Okay, so then again, this tells us about increasing or improving services. So for 24-25, we have to increase or improve services by 871,783. What we have written in the LCAP actually totals 973,197. So we can increase, we can have more increased or improved services in the LCAP, but we cannot have less than the 871,783 budgeted in the LCAP. So we're good there for 24-25. 24-25. And so this next chart for 23-24 goes back and tells us the blue section is where we were last year at this time when we did the LCFF calculator. I didn't have the unduplicated cost, I'm sorry, the unduplicated pupil count ended up being higher than what I had projected at budget adoption. So at budget adoption, I had increased or improved services at 589,000. As we're closing the books, we're coming into closing the books, and we have a true unduplicated account for 23-24. It actually is higher than what I had projected, so we had to increase the supplemental concentration piece of the LCAP for 23-24 to 703,000. So I think that's all I need to say about this page.
So Meg,
Yay, last page, yeah.
if for 23-24, we were required to spend was the requirement the 703,000 we spent because we increased our number?
Yeah, so when we close the books based on this iteration of the LCFF calculator, we're required to spend $703,000 on supplemental concentration actions, goals and actions. And that's what I have now in the budget, and that's what we're showing in the LCAP annual update section of the LCAP.
So that number, the 703,355, is increasing from 23-24 to 871,783 for 24-25?
Yes.
Which is an increase of 22%, 23%?
Yeah.
And that's because our census of unduplicated count is risen that dramatically.
Yes.
So because we are serving so many more students in those categories, we are having to budget more funding, even though we're not getting literally any additional funding from the state or anyone else.
Correct.
So we're sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul here.
Yeah, so I probably shouldn't say this online, so I won't, but we need, basically what we did was we have to take the actions and services that we are providing to students, and which of those actions and services actually fall into supplemental concentration framework. And but I will say, in the past, the district has always only budgeted in the LCAP the calculated supplemental concentration amount. You can always go over. You can't go under. You can always go over. So I think we should put into the LCAP everything that we're doing that hits the supplemental concentration mark, right? Everything, the actions and services that we're providing students that really do fall within or could be considered supplemental concentrationable, I think we put them in, because as you saw with the multi-year projection in LCFF, that number just keeps going up, and it's going to just keep going up. And as long as we're a basic aid district, we're not going to get any new money to support any really new services. So I think if we do that, we're preparing ourselves for the future, for whatever's coming. So that's kind of why in this year's budget, 24-25, we've budgeted more for supplemental concentration actions. I think it was 9.3 something, or 9 go back. Yeah, 973 versus the 871 that we're required to spend. I think you get one more page, Jason. There, this page. So down here at the bottom, yeah. And we're required to spend the 871.
So what percentage of our student body is considered to be unduplicated?
It's about 68%.
58%.
68.
My number's 69%, but yeah.
68%. So that's quite a change in the last 5 years, 10 years especially.
Right, and when you look at the student data, the data comes out of CalPads, and when you look at the student data, most of it is, the free and reduced population has gone up. So, what makes up the supplemental concentration? Low income foster youth, English language learners. So it's and homeless. So those are the demographics that make up the supplemental concentration students. And the LCFF is set up where all schools get a base grant for all their students. For students up to 50%, greater than 35 to 50%, you get another 20% of the base grant for those students. Above the 50% unduplicated, you get a 50% more for those students in the calculation. So that's how we calculate this number, this 871 number. It's a calculation based on the student demographics in the LCFF calculator.
And isn't there a category that starts at 70% too?
Maybe I don't think of it that way. I don't know.
No, I could be wrong. I mean,
Okay.
I thought there were 3 categories.
And I could just not know.
And if we hit that, we'll be having to dedicate even larger amounts of funding based on the LCAP.
Oh, so it's the 60. So we won't get any more money. There's something new. There's something new, but I'm not paying attention to it because we don't hit it yet. So I don't feel like I need to clutter my mind with it.
Okay, I'm just saying if we're pretty close, it might happen.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mike. There's nothing over here. Oh, there's one back there. Will that reach? Thanks.
We've got you, Jason. Go ahead.
Board president is running these meetings too long. All right, let's see. Next item is the annual update. All right. Let's see. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, so the next one is the annual update. And this is where we look at our progress over the past 3 years. So goal 1 has to do with every English or the EL students in our district. So a couple things here. One is that I think some of the desired outcomes for 23-24 that we had to put in 3 years ago were a little high. I think we had some pretty lofty goals here. In addition, that was just before COVID. So some of the, we didn't meet a lot of our goals, as if you want to look at the benchmarks that we were striving for here. But one of the things that we were very successful on over the last 3 years was reclassifying or redesignating EL students. I'm just going to go to the next page here. We reclassified, 23 students in 3 years, which is a big number. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we were able to have a dedicated EL teacher.
Can I interrupt you? Because I think that the year 3 outcome repeats the year 2 outcome because we don't have the figures for this year, right?
Right, but we're not, We had as much as so this is updated as much as we could.
No, I understand, but I'm saying you can't say 23 when the 9 you're counting for year 3 are the same 9 that were in year 2.
Oh, right, sorry, right, so, I think we had, yeah, this is the most recent data, yeah, you're right. So I think we had 5 this year, so we had 19, sorry, thank you. You're right, so the year 3 and year 2 data is the same when it could not be updated, so. Next year, we're going to have, I'll get into next year in a moment, but at the bottom is where we really had to fill in then the analysis on the goals. So, so Meg had to take the first 2 questions. Oh man, I keep moving it. This is really sensitive. The first 2 questions, and then let's see, the goals were met for the reclassification of EL students as well as for the participation rate, even though we, for the most part, 12 out of 14 students made improvements on the LPAC scores, not all showed improvement. And then in measuring the smarter balanced assessment, 50%, the goal of 50% was very high because we weren't even close to that. So that's a good learning experience for us. All right, moving on to the next goal. The next goal has to do with our low-income students, socioeconomically disadvantaged students. Let's see if I can just point out something of interest here. Our suspension rates went down every year. We had a very, very lofty goal of 0%, which is another kind of unattainable thing. Chronic absenteeism rate remained high, but I think that was a lot to do with COVID. The rate will be lower this year. The SBAC scores remained low, especially in math. So one of the goals that we're going to do is going to seek out more math professional development for staff, and then shift our RTI program focus to math when we can instead of ELA. All right, the next goal is improved outcomes for all students, measuring a variety of things. Let's see, what can I pull out here? This last year of seniors, we had fewer students completing A through G requirements and completing CTE pathways. But the year before was very high, so I'm not sure if that was.
You said, Brad, you were comparing the two, or you said, what did you say? Fewer completing the A through G requirements and fewer completing pathways. Fewer completing both?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But over the 3 years, though, our CTE programs have really grown, and I think we've created some strong, diverse pathways for such a small school district. We're going to continue those efforts, and again, more math professional development. We're going to be adding more elective teachers to the LCAP in 24-25, and we were going to add AE week in there, and we might consider doing that in the future, but I did end up taking the AE week out. And then just more CTE programs, or not more, but just strengthening those that we already have. And I think our new facilities are going to help with that. Goal 4 is school climate and family engagement. And we don't have the data for year 3, but we did see an increase from year 1 and 2
And one
instead
those-
instead of doing this survey, I did a different survey for development of the 24-25 LCAP. So we're not gonna see year 3 data here.
Jason,
Yep.
there's just above chronic absenteeism rates, there's school attendance rates, and we say that we don't have
Yeah.
information. We not collect that, or?
You know, I have asked multiple people at the county, and nobody knows how to get that number for us. It should be very easy, but nobody can give me that number, how to collect that number for the last 3 years. So I'm gonna continue trying, but this has always been submitted to the county, and they've never batted an eye at it. So we measure absenteeism rate, but not the attendance
Right.
rate.
Because, I mean, the chronic absenteeism rate, any person who is, 10 absences a year,
It's 18.
What?
18
18.
or 10% of the school.
18 a year is chronically absent.
Yep.
But they could still be there all the other time, or other students
Right.
could be there. I don't know, it's just,
Yeah,
it's interesting that we can't get that number.
right.
Because don't we, I mean, isn't it very important that we track attendance to?
Well, we do have it, but I've never been able to find a report that gets it.
So it'd be
And I'm
just
sure
staff,
it's
it'd be
out
staff.
there. I've asked the county for support, and they can't give me that support.
And it would
either.
be a lot of staff time for us to try and
That's what it
track
seems
our
like.
data.
It
How
seems
do
like
we
there has to
calculate
be-
chronic absenteeism?
seems like
Because
there
don't you
has to
need
be-
attendance in order to calculate
Right.
chronic absenteeism?
Yeah,
It's
So
one of
are
the-
they compiling the chronic absentee information, or
it's on Aries or
Aries just does it automatically, it
Yeah.
just spits it out?
the chronic absenteeism.
There was an article this week in the New York Times saying that I think it was saying nationally that one of the biggest problems is kindergarten attendance. Do you know how our absenteeism is in kindergarten relative to other grades?
I don't. I could find that out though before Tuesday.
I'd be interested as
In
to
the-
whether there's a difference or not.
In the past, it was low, or it was very high. Our absenteeism rate was very high, but I think it's come down. I'll try and figure that out for Tuesday.
You know, one of the reasons for kindergarten is it's not mandatory in the state of California.
Right, but it's true nationally.
Oh, no, but there's a law before the legislature to try to make it compulsory.
That'd be good.
You know who I haven't really bugged too much about this is Tobin. I bet he's the data guy. I bet he could help me with the attendance rate, but I'm shocked that nobody in the county can help me. All right, so that's the annual update. Any other questions on that?
So you say they're changing the format once again?
A little bit. So I'll stop sharing this one and go on to the next one. All right, so the front pages are the same. Really what is important here is the annual performance, so that's where we kind of reflect on what we just talked about. And they are requiring that we tie everything in this box, where we have to mention our dashboard results in this box, and then try to have a goal or an action to address it. So our math and EL scores for students with disabilities was in the red on the dashboard. Our ELA results for high school were in the red, but that was mainly because the graduating class the prior year was so high that even though our scores were still pretty high, they were in the red because there was such a big decrease. And then the chronic absenteeism for white, low-income, and Hispanic student groups were all in the red. I think our chronic absenteeism rate's gonna be right around 25% this year, so it'll be an increase, or it'll be better, but still, it's pretty low, or high, I guess.
I mean, if you had to say, what are the leading factors for chronic absenteeism? Is it, illness? Is it?
I think it's still illness. At the beginning of the year, we were still dealing with COVID. We haven't dealt as much with COVID, but about October, November, we started saying, hey, if your kid has a sniffle, still bring them in. If they're not showing symptoms worse than that, bring them in, just like we used to do. But I still think it's illness. So this year I sent out a survey to the faculty and staff, the administrators, students, and parents. It was kind of the same survey, but just manipulated a little bit based on the group. So it was nice to get student and parent input at this stage. I usually have I've had soup with the soup meetings and had in-person meetings, and I had 1 or 2 parents show up. I think this time I had about 40 parents fill out the survey, so that's much better. And it was really just a general conversation. I try to have a conversation and say, what are your hopes and dreams for your child? How are we doing in accomplishing those hopes and dreams? What can we be doing better? And then I asked about student safety and school connectedness. So it was a much better way to get feedback. And the results indicated that our CTE classes and our CTE pathways were very valued, and they want to actually see more options in the future. Our small schools and our rural communities were valued, our outlying sites, and CTE classes, and then our social worker and our mental health therapists continue to be funded through the LCAP as well. So I'm going to start on with the goals. Goal 1 is, again, for EL students. A lot of the goals are similar. So I haven't changed too much, but I'm trying to find better ways of measurement. So the goal 1.1 is the same for showing improvement on the LPAC. Number 1.2, I'm going to start measuring the individual raw scores for each student taking the ELA and math tests for EL students. I still have to report on the SBAC for the ELA and the math for the percentage meeting the standard, but I'm also going to be measuring the raw score to see how much they're improving year over year. So that's about it for that one. And we don't do anything here.
So Jason,
Yep.
in terms of the LPAC versus the smarter balanced, the SBAC, are they covering the same material?
No, the LPAC is all about how proficient they are with English language. So they measure reading, writing, speaking, listening for the English language.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they have to demonstrate proficiency in those areas. And then you take their grades and their SBAC results and teacher opinion to see if they're redesignated. So.
Well, I mean, you note that the majority of our EL students scored a 1 on the ELA part of the SBAC. You know, what is the bridge to improvement there, do you think?
I think more exposure to the English language.
Uh-huh. And the fact that they're probably speaking their native tongue at home,
Right.
Makes that harder.
Yeah, and I think proportionally the majority of our EL students are K through 3.
Uh-huh.
So they didn't take the SBAC. So if we have a student move into the district or move into the country when they're older, I think that's even more difficult for them
Right.
to meet the standard. All right, goal 2 is for the low-income students. This one, we have to measure chronic absenteeism, their performance on the ELA and the math. In 2023, the percentage of socioeconomically disadvantaged students meeting the standard for the ELA was 47%, which is pretty good, considering the state. I don't know what the state average was, but it was much higher. You can see in math we were at 27%. So I had half of the social worker in the first section, half of the social worker in this section. And then I've added the staffing at Compshe and Albion schools, and then maintaining our RTI teacher, and then our instructional and integrative aides at all sites. Goal 3 is improve student outcomes for all students. A lot of our goals are kind of where we were pre-COVID. For our 12th graders, completing the A through G and CTE pathways, achieving 3 on the AP tests. Our actions here are, we put in many of our elective teachers and our CTE teachers in this one. Guidance counselor, we're maintaining a guidance counselor at 60%. And then again, we added our instructional and integrative aides to this goal as well. All right, goal 4 is school climate and family engagement. So this one's going to be based on the survey that I'm going to be giving.
Yeah, that was my question. The 23-24 survey hasn't gone out yet.
Yeah, well, I instead for the 23-24 survey, I did the survey to develop the LCAP. So I didn't do 2 surveys, because this survey, I could have done 2 surveys. Maybe I still can, but it was more about developing the new LCAP, so I chose to do that instead. Our suspension rates are much lower than they were 5-10 years ago. We're finding new ways to intervene with behavior. I think our head teacher at the K-8 has been very helpful in that regard, and the addition of Noah's position here at the high school, that's been very helpful. And then offering just other modes of redirection. And PBIS, that helps as well. Positive behavior interventions and supports. This is where we have our mental health therapist and our counseling services and our head teacher at the K-8. Goal 5. So Michael, this is where it's a little different, is on page 21, where we have to do required descriptions of the goals, the needs, how we address the need, why it's provided, on whether it's LEA or school-wide, and then what we're going to measure for our unduplicated students. So all of our goals here are listed again, and then it goes into more detail.
Mm-hmm. You know, going back to that last page of budget items on, well, maybe not the last one, but page 13, you know, there's a column that says contributing. What does that mean?
So contributing is, if it's yes, that means it is contributing to the supplemental concentration
Oh, okay.
portion of it.
then why would there be a no? I mean,
So then we have other expenses in the LCAP that don't contribute. So this is not just for unduplicated students, so it's also for all students.
Okay. And are those numbers inclusive of other costs as well?
Like benefits?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that, if you look at 3.1 and 3.3, they're virtually the same, but quite a different FTE ratio.
Can I answer that?
Yes.
So sometimes,
Michael, when it says it's contributing, yes, that means a portion, at least a portion of the total funds are being paid with the supplemental concentration grant. So some of this in the elective for CTE, we may be paying for some salaries out of the CTEIG grant or something different, but a portion is contributing. So there could be different funding sources in here. Oh, I see what you're saying. The number. Mm-hmm. Right. I see what you're saying. Some of our CTE teachers newer or placement on the salary schedule.
I wonder if that number of 3.2 needs to be modified a little, Meg. I wonder if we didn't modify that number.
No, we did.
Okay.
But I think it's just placement on the salary schedule of those particular teachers.
Yeah,
And some of our CTE teachers don't work enough to get benefits, so there's more benefit cost to the full-time teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's it too.
I think I mentioned this earlier, in the context of our negotiations, that the more things that we fund out of the LCAP, it makes it harder to cut those because we're relying on those to fulfill our LCAP.
Right.
So that it reduces our options when we're looking for savings.
But also, because our percentage is so high, we're able to put more in the supplemental concentration
Right,
portion of it.
we're required to put more in, yeah.
Well, we're able to as well. Like,
Yeah.
we're allowed to be a little more,
Right.
we're allowed to put more in. We can justify more. So, I think this is I think it's mainly a compliance document, unfortunately. I think Michael said it at the beginning. I think that this is, we are required to spend more money. We are getting no money, and also at the same time, we're trying to reduce, staffing and lower our expenditures. So it makes this doubly hard to have a document that makes a lot of sense, honestly. But I think it comes with good data too. I especially like the data when you're looking at student and family engagement, and then some of the I particularly like the students who are meeting the A through G requirements and CTE pathways. I think those are really telling of what our students are leaving with. Questions?
So has this been referred to the county already? Or is
Yeah, so earlier than ever, I ran it by the county, and she already sent back some feedback and some red ink, and I fixed all that, and so hopefully it'll be an easier process at the end of the summer, but it's been approved by SELPA and the county so far.
Does this come back to us for approval at a later date?
Tuesday.
Oh, it does, okay.
Yep.
Any other questions for Jason on the LCAP? All right, thank you, Jason. And, any public comment about the LCAP now that we've finished that, in case anyone's stuck with us?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Or for that matter, on any other thing that we've discussed over the, okay.
Emily?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just, there was those couple of comments in the message, in the comments. Did you see when Aaron put them up? I was just thinking we maybe should make sure that
On
we
the
have
Q&A, yeah, is there
Yeah.
somewhere to preserve those?
Well, I don't know if necessarily preserve them, but if you, if the president know, because I think it's important that those comments get read.
Yeah, we can't see those as,
Right, unless you're on
as
Zoom.
participants, only, no, even on my Zoom, I can't see them.
They'll be recorded in the
Oh, okay, great.
video, and so we can easily go back and pull that information out of the video, and I can definitely include it in minutes.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking in the moment, I'd like to have it brought to our attention and read out loud. Unless
Yeah,
there's a reason not
that
to.
Q&A can't be seen by other participants in the webinar, it can only be seen by the host, so that was my
No,
experience.
if you're a panelist, you can.
Right.
Right, that's what I'm saying, if you're not a panelist, you don't see that, so
So either a president has to make a point to be a panelist and bring it to our attention, or we need another procedure. That's all, I'm just curious, because I know I saw you post them for a second, but I don't think you noticed, or if you did, it didn't get brought to everyone's attention.
Yeah.
So I would just like people that are participating to be able to have their thoughts heard by all of us, and if we don't already have a procedure that we agree on
Yeah,
what it is.
does that pop up for you, Aaron, where you can flag it for me that there's something in the Q&A?
Yeah, because you popped them up, Aaron, right? They went up on the screen.
Right, like I can put them up on the screen so that you guys can know that it's happening, and then at your
So
discretion.
did you take them down, or did they just show up for a moment?
No, I took them down.
Okay, so maybe you leave them up until the board chair recognizes
The
them
only
or something?
difficult situation would be that if someone else is screen sharing, that you're not gonna see them. So then
Okay.
I would need to,
Okay, so maybe we want to think about this, but I would like,
Yeah, or it may be helpful for me to be a panelist, that way I can pull them up and read them into the record when it's
Absolutely.
appropriate. Yeah, and you can just sort of flag that there's something in the Q&A if I miss it.
perfect solution.
Yeah,
So
looks
is
like,
it-
Teddy, you have your hand up?
Thanks. Yeah, just as far as what you just mentioned, when Spirit, I personally think during the Board of Supervisors meeting, they have a protocol where either beginning or end, they read the public comments so that that can be noted during the actual conversation when people are focusing on that. Because otherwise things get dropped through the cracks and lost. And I really did want my comments to just kind of get heard in the moment so they don't just disappear into the ethers, because we're all busy. And if it's not in the moment, it falls through the cracks. And so I agree, if you guys could build a protocol and we all know what it is, so we know like our public comments are going to be read at the end, or somehow somebody at that meeting is going to acknowledge them during that moment, more people might be inclined to comment, knowing there is a protocol and you guys are interested in what we have to say.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Teddy. I think having me as a panelist, they will pop up for me as an alert during the meeting, and I
Yeah.
can make a decision when
Perfect.
and how to present them. So I think that'll help. Thanks, One Spirit.
Great.
And wouldn't they just go along with our present protocol where if they're about something not on the agenda, it's at public comment time, they get read, otherwise they get read during that agenda item?
That sounds right. Yeah, yeah. Similar to in the past, people have emailed me things ahead of time that I've read during public comment just to get them into the record. So, yeah, that sounds good. All right. I think with that, we're adjourned. We have our next meeting next Tuesday.
Could we set these tables up about 3 feet back next Tuesday?
Absolutely. You're getting a lot of sun.